Parenting is the ultimate test of self-control, not because children are difficult, but because they expose every weakness you have not mastered. Every tantrum tests your patience. Every refusal challenges your authority. Every emotional moment asks one brutal question: can you stay calm when chaos demands a reaction? This audiobook exists because most parents are reacting, and reactive parents raise reactive children. Here we do something different. Using the discipline of Marcus Aurelius, you will learn how to stay grounded when emotions explode, how to lead without shouting, and how to turn everyday family chaos into training for resilience, discipline, and inner strength. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now, because this is not entertainment. This is training. And the parents who finish this audiobook will not parent the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because the final chapters will give you a complete Stoic framework you can use in real moments. Not theory, not quotes. Real tools you can apply tonight when emotions rise and control is tested. By the end of this audiobook, you will know how to stay calm during tantrums without shutting down, hold authority without anger, raise children who can regulate themselves instead of collapsing under pressure. Your child does not need a perfect parent. They need a stable one. This is how you stop reacting. This is how you start leading. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Control yourself before you try to control your child. Your child is not the problem. Your reaction is. That is the truth most parents avoid because it is uncomfortable. It is easier to correct a child than to confront yourself. It is easier to demand obedience than to practice discipline. But Stoicism does not allow shortcuts. Leadership always starts inward. Always. You have a choice. You can keep reacting and losing authority. Or you can regulate yourself and become the calm center your child needs. That is the key. Parents lose authority the moment emotions take the wheel. Not slowly. Instantly. The second you raise your voice, you surrender leadership. The second you react emotionally, you teach your child that emotions are in charge. And children learn faster from what you do than from anything you say. You do not need to be louder. You do not need to be harsher. You do not need to be more controlling. You need to be steadier. Calm is not a personality. Calm is not something you either have or do not. Calm is a practice skill. And if you do not practice it, your child will practice reacting instead. You have a choice. Let's be clear about something most parenting advice gets wrong. Children are not born regulated. They borrow the regulation from you. When a child melts down, they are not asking for control. They are asking for stability. They are scanning you for cues. Are you safe? Are you steady? Are you in control of yourself? If the answer is no, their nervous system escalates and the chaos grows. This is why yelling never works in the long term. It may stop behavior in the moment, but it destroys trust. It teaches fear, not discipline. Compliance, not character. Stoicism rejects that. Stoic parenting is not soft. It is not permissive. It is controlled strength. And it starts with this principle. You cannot teach regulation if you do not live it. Say it again. You cannot teach regulation if you do not live it. That is the repetition anchor of this entire chapter. Every time your child pushes boundaries, you are being tested. Not tested as a parent, tested as a leader. Leaders do not react. Leaders respond. Reaction is emotional. Response is intentional. That is the difference between chaos and authority. You have a choice. Let's talk about what really happens in those moments you lose control. Your child refuses to listen. Your body tightens. Your heart rate increases, your voice rises. At that point, you are no longer teaching. You are discharging emotion. And emotion always wants relief, not results. That is the problem. It is not about your child's behavior. It is about your discipline. Say it clearly. It is not about their behavior. It is about your discipline. When you react, you are not correcting your child. You are protecting your ego. That is uncomfortable to hear, but it is necessary. Stoicism demands honesty before improvement. You feel disrespected, you feel ignored, you feel out of control. Those are feelings. They are not commands. You have a choice. The moment you feel triggered is the moment leadership begins. Not after. Not later. Right there. This is where most parents fail. They believe leadership happens after the child calms down. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Leadership happens the moment you choose not to react. You do not need your child's permission to stay calm. You do not need them to behave first. You do not need perfect conditions. You regulate yourself first, always, because the calmest person in the room controls the room. That is the key. Let's get practical. When your child escalates, your nervous system wants to match them. That is biology. That is instinct. But Stoicism is about training above instinct. You feel the surge, you pause, you breathe slowly and deeply, not for them, for you. Because the breath is the first act of discipline. Slow breath lowers adrenaline. Lower adrenaline restores judgment. This is not philosophy, this is physiology. You are not calming down to be nice. You are calming down to lead. You have a choice. Now, here is the hard truth. If you cannot stay calm during small conflicts, you will not handle big ones. If you cannot regulate during tantrums, you will not regulate during teenage rebellion. If you cannot control yourself now, you will lose authority later. Control compounds. So does chaos. This is why Stoic parenting focuses on the parent first. You are the example. You are the standard. You are the training ground. Children do not rise to your words. They fall into your habits. That is the key. Let's talk about authority. Real authority is quiet. It does not need to announce itself, and it does not need volume. It does not need threats. Authority is consistency. When your child knows you will not lose control, they stop trying to control you. When they know you are steady, they feel safe. And safety creates cooperation. Fear creates rebellion. You have a choice. Now ask yourself honestly, when you lose your temper, what are you teaching? You are teaching that emotions excuse behavior. You are teaching that power comes from volume. You are teaching that frustration justifies a reaction, not with words, with actions. And children always learn actions. Stoicism demands alignment. Your behavior must match your expectations. If you expect emotional control from your child while abandoning it yourself, you are teaching hypocrisy. And children detect hypocrisy instantly. That is why your words stop working. It is not because your child is difficult, it is because your actions contradict your message. You cannot teach regulation if you do not live it. Say it again. Now let's reframe discipline. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is modeling. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you are teaching patience. Every time you speak calmly under pressure, you are teaching control. Every time you enforce a boundary without anger, you are teaching strength. This is slow work, but it is permanent work. You have a choice. Short-term compliance or long-term resilience. Immediate obedience or future self-control. Stoicism always chooses the long term, because life will not accommodate your child's emotions. The world will not pause for their frustration. You are preparing them for reality. And reality rewards discipline. Now here is a clear instruction. For the next 7 days, your only goal is this. Do not eliminate conflict. Eliminate reaction. You will still correct behavior. You will still set boundaries, but you will do it without emotional leakage. Calm voice, clear instructions, consistent consequence. No lectures, no yelling, no emotional negotiations. You do not need to explain everything. You do not need to convince them. You need to be consistent. That is the key. Your child may resist at first. That is normal. Chaos fights discipline before it collapses. Do not mistake resistance for failure. Resistance means the old pattern is breaking. You stay steady. Because Stoic parents do not parent from mood, they parent from principle. You have a choice. Let's close this chapter with clarity. You are not raising a child, you are training a future adult. And adults are shaped by example, not instruction. If you want a child who can regulate emotions, you must become regulated. If you want a child who can stay calm under pressure, you must practice staying calm under pressure. If you want a child who respects boundaries, you must enforce them without losing control. You cannot outsource this. You cannot skip it. You cannot fake it. You live it. You mastered the first truth. Your child is not the problem. Your reaction is, you have a choice. Control yourself and you gain authority. React emotionally and you lose it. You cannot teach regulation if you do not live it. You learned where leadership begins. Now it is time to learn where most parents give their power away. You controlled yourself. Now let's talk about responsibility. Chapter 2. Your child is not responsible for your emotions. Your child is not responsible for how you feel. Not for your frustration. Not for your stress. Not for your anger. That responsibility is yours. And until you accept it, you will keep giving your power away. You have a choice. You can keep blaming your child for your emotional state, or you can reclaim control and become the adult in the room. That is the key. Most parents do not realize this, but the fastest way to lose authority is to make your emotions someone else's job. The moment you say, "You are making me angry," you surrender leadership. You teach your child that they control you, and children do not respect what they can control. Stoicism is clear on this. You are responsible for your judgments. You are responsible for your reactions, no one else. This principle goes back to Marcus Aurelius, who reminded himself daily that other people's behavior does not control his inner state. If an emperor could learn this under constant pressure, you can learn it in your home. You have a choice. Let's talk about the hidden mistake most parents make. They outsource emotional regulation to their child. Think about the language you hear. Stop it. You're stressing me out. You're making me lose my patience. Why are you doing this to me? That language seems harmless. It is not. It tells your child that your calmness depends on their behavior. It teaches them that emotions are weapons. And once a child learns that, conflict escalates. That is the problem. Your child does not need the power to regulate your emotions. They need to learn how to regulate themselves. You cannot teach that if you are blaming them for yours. You have a choice. Here is the Stoic rule you must adopt. Your emotions are your responsibility. Always. Not later. Not after they behave better. Now. When your child misbehaves, you may feel anger. That feeling is real. But it is not an instruction. It is not about the feeling. It is about the discipline. Say it again. It is not about the feeling. It is about the discipline. Stoicism never asks you to suppress emotion. It asks you to stop obeying it. Your child cries. You feel overwhelmed. That is human. But what you do next is leadership. You have a choice. You can react and teach emotional dependency, or you can stay grounded and teach emotional ownership. Let's be honest. Children push buttons. They test limits. They repeat behavior. That is their job. Your job is to remain stable. When you lose control, the child learns this lesson. If I escalate enough, I gain power. When you remain calm, the child learns a different lesson. My emotions do not control the world. That lesson will shape their entire life. That is the key. Now let's address something uncomfortable. Parental burnout often comes from emotional entanglement. You take their mood personally. You internalize their resistance. You feel attacked by their behavior. But their behavior is not a commentary on your worth. It is information. You have a choice. Detach emotionally or stay exhausted. Stoicism teaches separation, not coldness, clarity. When your child is upset, you do not merge with their emotion. You observe it. You hold the boundary. You remain steady. This is how children learn regulation. They borrow it from you until they can do it themselves. But if you collapse emotionally, they have nothing to borrow. You cannot teach regulation if you do not live it. Say it again. Now let's reframe responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is ownership. You own your reaction. Your child owns their behavior. When you confuse those two, chaos follows. Many parents believe that love means emotional absorption. It does not. Love means guidance. Guidance requires distance. That is the Stoic difference. You can care deeply without surrendering control. You can empathize without escalating. You can support without absorbing. You have a choice. Here is a practical rule you must adopt immediately. Never explain your emotional reaction as your child's fault. Instead of saying, "You are making me angry," you say nothing. You breathe. You respond calmly. Not because they deserve it, because you do. Your discipline is not conditional. That is the key. Now let's look at the long-term cost of emotional outsourcing. Children who believe they are responsible for adult emotions grow up anxious. They become hyper-aware. They walk on eggshells, or they become manipulative. They learn how to provoke reactions. They use emotion as leverage. Both outcomes are damaging. Stoic parenting avoids both. You have a choice. You either teach your child emotional independence, or you teach emotional control through guilt and fear. One builds strength. The other builds resentment. It is not about being gentle. It is about being clear. Let's talk about boundaries. Boundaries enforced with emotion feel unstable. Boundaries enforced with calm feel immovable. When your child crosses a boundary, your response must be boring, predictable, consistent. Emotion turns discipline into drama. Drama teaches nothing. Say it again. Emotion turns discipline into drama. That is why Stoic parents are boring under pressure. And boring is powerful. Your child does not need a performance. They need consistency. You have a choice. Now here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. For the next week, eliminate one phrase from your vocabulary. Any version of "you make me feel," replace it with silence and action. You do not argue about emotions. You do not negotiate feelings. You enforce boundaries calmly. This will feel unnatural at first. That is normal. You are breaking an old pattern. Expect resistance. From your child, from yourself. Stay steady. because every time you regulate yourself, you reclaim authority. This chapter is not about your child changing. It is about you changing the rules of engagement. You stop making your emotional state their responsibility. You stop outsourcing your calm. You stop giving your power away. You have a choice. Let's anchor this chapter with repetition. Your child is not responsible for your emotions. Your child is not responsible for your emotions. Your child is not responsible for your emotions. You are. And when you accept that fully, parenting becomes simpler, not easier, clearer. You mastered self-control. You reclaimed emotional responsibility. Now is the time to confront the mistake that weakens children in the long term. You stop blaming your child. Now let's talk about rescuing them. Chapter 3. Stop rescuing. Start training resilience. Rescuing feels like love, but most of the time, it is fear in disguise. You step in to stop the tears. You remove the obstacle. You smooth the path. And in that moment, you feel like a good parent. But here is the hard truth. Every unnecessary rescue weakens your child. You have a choice. You can keep protecting them from discomfort, or you can prepare them for life. That is the key. Stoicism is clear about this. Strength is built through exposure, not avoidance. Resilience is trained, not explained. Your child is not fragile. They are adaptable. And every time you remove a challenge they could survive, you steal a chance to grow. You have a choice. Let's define rescuing clearly, because many parents misunderstand it. Rescuing is not helping when help is truly needed. Rescuing is stepping in too early. Rescuing is removing discomfort instead of teaching endurance. You tie your shoes, they could learn to tie. You solve the problem, and they could struggle through. You intervene the moment frustration appears. Why? Because their discomfort makes you uncomfortable. That is the real reason. It is not about their pain. It is about your reaction to it. It is not about compassion. It is about control. That is the problem. You have a choice. Stoic parenting demands that you tolerate short-term discomfort to build long-term strength. This is not cruelty. This is discipline. When a child struggles, their nervous system is learning. When you rush in, you interrupt that learning. You teach this lesson instead. Discomfort is dangerous. Frustration means stop. Someone else will fix this. That lesson follows them into adulthood. And adulthood does not rescue. That is the key. Let's talk about the emotional cost of rescuing. Children who are rescued too often become anxious. They doubt their ability. They fear failure. Why? Because they never practice surviving it. Rescuing tells a child, you cannot handle this. Even if you never say those words. Children hear what you do. You have a choice. Now let's talk about the parent side of this. Rescuing gives immediate relief. The crying stops. The tension drops. But relief is not the same as results. Relief is emotional. Results are developmental. Stoicism always chooses results because results compound. Every time you allow your child to struggle appropriately, you deposit resilience. Every time you remove the struggle, you withdraw it. That account will be used later. During exams, during rejection, during failure, during stress. You decide now whether that account is empty or strong. That is the key. Let's get specific. Your child is frustrated with homework. They complain, they resist, they say they cannot do it. Your instinct is to help immediately. Pause. Ask yourself one question. Is this dangerous or is this uncomfortable? If it is uncomfortable, you wait. You do not abandon them. You stay present. But you do not solve it. You say, "I see this is hard. Keep going." That sentence does more than a solution ever could. It communicates belief. It communicates confidence. It communicates expectation. And expectation shapes behavior. You have a choice. Now let's talk about tantrums. Tantrums are not emergencies. They are emotional storms. Rescuing during a tantrum teaches escalation. The louder the emotion, the faster the parent reacts. Children learn patterns quickly. Stoic parents break that pattern. You do not punish the emotion. You do not reward it either. You stay calm. You stay present. You wait. This teaches the most important lesson of all. Emotions rise, emotions fall, and they do not control the world. That is resilience. You have a choice. Now let's confront a common fear. What if my child feels unsupported? Support is not the same as rescue. Support is present without interference. Support is belief without control. Support is guidance without removal of effort. You can say, "I am here," without saying, "I will fix this." That distinction changes everything. Stoicism teaches this clearly. You guide the process. You do not replace it. That is the key. Let's talk about mistakes. Rescuing often shows up as mistake prevention. You correct too early. You interrupt learning. Mistakes are teachers. If you remove them, you remove education. A child who never fails never learns how to recover. A child who never struggles never learns how to persist. Recovery is more important than perfection. You have a choice. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. Rescuing creates dependence. Dependence creates insecurity. Insecurity creates anxiety. And anxiety is not a strength. Stoic parenting builds self-trust. Self-trust is built when a child experiences difficulty and survives it. Not once, repeatedly. That is the repetition anchor. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is training. Say it again. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is training. Now let's give you a framework you can use immediately. The Stoic Resilience Filter. Before you intervene, ask 3 questions. First, is my child safe? If the answer is yes, continue. Second, is this within their capacity to learn? If the answer is yes, continue. Third, am I stepping in to help them or to calm myself? If it is to calm yourself, step back. That filter will save you years of overparenting. You have a choice. Let's apply this to real life. Your child forgets homework, natural consequence. You want to rescue. You want to bring it to school? Pause. This is not neglect. This is training. They learn responsibility faster from consequences than from lectures. Your child argues with a friend. They are upset. You want to fix it. You want to intervene. Pause. Ask questions instead. What do you think you could do next? You are not abandoning. You are teaching problem solving. That is the key. Now let's address guilt. Many parents rescue because they feel guilty. They feel busy. They feel absent. They feel pressure. Guilt-driven parenting creates weak boundaries. Stoicism rejects guilt as a guide. You do not parent from guilt. You parent from principle. Principles create stability. Guilt creates inconsistency. Children need consistency more than comfort. You have a choice. Now here is the discipline you must practice. When your child struggles, you stay emotionally neutral. You do not rush. You do not dramatize. You say less. You observe more. You let effort do the work. This will feel hard because you are breaking your own pattern. Expect discomfort. That discomfort is yours to manage. Remember the anchor: you cannot teach regulation if you do not live it. That applies here too. Your child is learning to tolerate frustration. You are learning to tolerate watching it. Both are necessary. That is the key. Let's close this chapter with clarity. Rescuing feels loving in the moment, but it robs your child of strength. Training resilience feels uncomfortable in the moment, but it builds confidence that lasts. You have a choice. Raise a child who expects rescue, or raise a child who trusts themselves. Stoicism chooses the second. You stopped reacting. You stopped outsourcing emotions. Now you stop rescuing. You are building something bigger than comfort. You are building capability. You trained resilience. Now it is time to understand the most powerful teacher your child has. You. Chapter 4. Model the behavior you want to see. Your child is always watching you, not when you are calm and prepared, when you are tired, when you are frustrated, when things do not go your way. That is when the real lesson happens. You have a choice. You can teach with words, or you can teach with behavior. Children believe in behavior. They ignore speeches. That is the key. Most parents talk about patience, then rush. They talk about respect, then interrupt. They talk about emotional control, then explode, and then they wonder why nothing sticks. Stoicism is ruthless on this point. You do not teach values, you demonstrate them. You have a choice. If you want a calm child, you must become calm. If you want a respectful child, you must practice respect. If you want a disciplined child, you must live with discipline. You cannot outsource modeling. Say it clearly. You are the curriculum. That is the repetition anchor of this chapter. Children do not rise to your expectations. They sink to your habits. That is why yelling about calmness fails. That is why demanding respect without giving it collapses. That is why emotional lectures produce emotionally unstable children. It is not about intention, it is about consistency. You have a choice. Let's talk about what modeling really means. Modeling does not mean being perfect, it means being regulated. You will feel anger, you will feel stress, you will feel frustration. Stoicism does not ask you to pretend otherwise. It asks you to respond with discipline. Your child does not need to see you without emotion. They need to see you in control. That is the difference. A parent who never feels frustration teaches nothing. A parent who feels it and manages it teaches everything. That is the key. Let's make this practical. Your child spills something. Your first impulse is irritation. You have a choice. You can sigh, scold, and react. Or you can pause, breathe, and respond. The response is not about the spill, it is about the lesson. If you react emotionally, the lesson is this: small mistakes cause big reactions. If you stay calm, the lesson is different. Mistakes are manageable. That lesson will follow your child into adulthood. You are not raising a child for your house. You are raising a person for the world, and the world rewards composure. You have a choice. Now let's address a common excuse. I am stressed. I am human. Yes, and so is leadership. Stoicism never denies humanity. It demands responsibility. You do not get to abandon discipline because you are tired. That is when discipline matters most. Children do not learn from your best days, they learn from your worst ones. That is uncomfortable, but it is true. You have a choice. Let's talk about emotional honesty. Some parents believe modeling means hiding emotions. It does not. You can name emotions without acting them out. You can say, "I feel frustrated, so I am taking a breath." That is modeling. You are teaching emotional literacy and control simultaneously. You are showing that feelings exist and that they do not run the show. That is Stoic strength. It is not about suppression. It is about command. Say it again. It is not about suppression. It is about command. Now let's talk about inconsistency. Inconsistent behavior destroys authority faster than strictness ever will. If you are calm one day and explosive the next, your child cannot predict you. Unpredictability creates anxiety. Anxiety creates resistance. Children push boundaries harder when they do not trust stability. Stoic parents understand this. They aim for boring consistency. Same tone, same response, same consequence. Emotion does not rewrite the rules. You have a choice. Let's examine how children copy stress. When you rush constantly, your child learns urgency. When you panic over small things, your child learns anxiety. When you complain endlessly, your child learns to feel helpless. This happens quietly, without instruction. That is why modeling matters more than discipline systems. Your daily behavior is shaping their nervous system. That is the key. Now let's confront the ego. Many parents react emotionally because they feel challenged. They feel disrespected and they feel undermined. That reaction is not about the child. It is about the ego. Stoicism is clear. Ego is the enemy of leadership. You do not need to win against your child. You need to guide them. Winning escalates conflict. Guiding builds trust. You have a choice. Let's talk about an apology. A Stoic parent is not afraid to apologize, but they do it with strength, not weakness. If you lose control, you acknowledge it calmly. You do not justify it. You do not blame stress or the child. You say, "I raised my voice. That was not how I want to handle things." Then you move on. That models accountability. That models humility. Those models are repaired. Children learn how to recover from mistakes by watching you do it. That is the key. Now let's talk about patience. Patience is not waiting. Patience is controlling urgency. When your child is slow, distracted, or resistant, your response teaches them how to handle pressure. If you rush them, you teach panic. If you stay calm, you teach pacing. Life rewards pacing. You have a choice. Now here is a hard truth. You cannot tell a child to regulate while living unregulated yourself. It will never work. Your tone teaches more than your words. Your posture teaches more than your rules. Your reactions teach more than your punishments. You are modeling whether you want to or not. That is why Stoicism starts with self-mastery. You have a choice. Let's give you a clear behavioral instruction for this chapter. For the next 7 days, focus on one thing only: your response. Not your child's behavior, not outcomes, your response. Before you speak, ask one question. What am I modeling right now? If the answer is impatience, pause. If the answer is control, proceed. This single question will change how you parent, because it forces awareness, and awareness creates discipline. You do not need to be perfect, you need to be consistent. That is the key. Now let's address fear. Some parents fear that calm will be mistaken for weakness. It will not. Calm communicates certainty. Anger communicates loss of control. Children trust certainty, that they feel safe around it. Stoic calm is not passive. It is grounded. You enforce boundaries without emotion. You correct behavior without anger. You lead without intimidation. That is a strength. You have a choice. Let's anchor this chapter with repetition. You are the curriculum. You are the curriculum. You are the curriculum. Your child is constantly learning from you, not from your lectures, from your life. If you want different behavior, become different behavior. You modeled regulation. You modeled discipline. You modeled control. Now it is time to apply that control to boundaries. You learned how to lead by example. Now let's talk about enforcing rules without losing authority. Chapter 5. Discipline without anger is power. Anger feels powerful. That is why parents reach for it. It is fast. It is loud. It creates instant compliance, and it destroys authority. You have a choice. You can discipline through anger, or you can discipline through control. Only one builds respect. That is the key. Anger is not strength. Anger is a loss of regulation disguised as power. Stoicism is clear on this. If you cannot control yourself, you cannot control anything else. Discipline without anger is not weakness. It is mastery. And mastery is what children respect. You have a choice. Let's talk about what anger actually teaches. When you discipline in anger, your child learns one thing: that you are angry. Power comes from emotional escalation. They do not learn responsibility. They do not learn self-control. They learn fear. Fear creates obedience only while you are present. The moment you are gone, fear collapses. Stoic parenting does not rely on fear, it builds internal discipline. That is the difference. You do not want a child who behaves when watched. You want a child who behaves because they understand. Anger blocks understanding. That is the key. Let's be honest. Most anger and discipline is not about the rule being broken. It is about the parent feeling challenged, ignored, or disrespected. That is ego. Stoicism demands that the ego step aside. You do not discipline to assert dominance. You discipline to teach structure. Structure requires clarity. Clarity cannot exist in anger. You have a choice. Now let's talk about calm discipline. Calm discipline is boring, predictable, consistent, and that is exactly why it works. Children test boundaries emotionally. If boundaries respond emotionally, the test continues. If boundaries respond calmly, the test ends. Emotion feeds conflict. Calm starves it. That is the key. Let's look at a real example. Your child breaks a rule. You feel irritation rise. You have a choice. You can lecture, yell, or threaten. Or you can act. Calmly state the rule. Calmly state the consequence. Follow through, no anger, no drama, no negotiation. This feels unsatisfying at first. Anger gives emotional release. But discipline is not about your release. It is about their learning. You have a choice. Now let's talk about consistency. Inconsistent discipline trains manipulation. Children learn which moods they can exploit. Stoic discipline removes mood from the equation. The rule is the rule. The consequence is the consequence. Not because you are harsh, because you are reliable. Reliability builds trust. Trust builds cooperation. That is the key. Let's address a common myth. If I am calm, my child will not take me seriously. False. Children take clarity seriously. They take follow-through seriously. They do not take anger seriously. They wait for it to pass. Anger teaches children to endure noise. Calm teaches them to respect boundaries. You have a choice. Now let's talk about consequences. Consequences are not punishments. They are outcomes. Punishment is emotional. The consequence is instructional. When consequences are delivered calmly, the lesson sticks. When they are delivered in anger, the lesson is lost in emotion. Say it again. Punishment is emotional. The consequence is instructional. That is the Stoic distinction. You have a choice. Now let's talk about timing. Disciplining. While emotional is always a mistake, always. If you feel heated, you wait. Waiting is not a weakness. Waiting is control. You do not need to correct immediately to be effective. You need to correct clearly. Clarity requires calm. That is the key. Let's talk about authority again. Authority is not volume. Authority is certainty. When you speak calmly and act decisively, your child feels certainty. When you shout and threaten, they feel instability. Children crave stability more than anything else. Stoic parents provide it. You have a choice. Now let's confront guilt. Many parents avoid calm discipline because they feel guilty enforcing boundaries. They fear being disliked. They fear being too strict. But parenting is not a popularity contest. It is leadership. Leadership sometimes disappoints. That is unavoidable. Stoicism accepts this. You do not need your child's approval to guide them. You need their trust. Trust comes from fairness and consistency, not emotional softness. That is the key. Let's get practical. Here is the Stoic discipline framework. Step 1. State expectations in advance. Rules should never be a surprise. Step 2. Enforce consequences immediately and calmly. No warnings that repeat endlessly. Step 3. Do not argue. Do not justify. Do not negotiate. You explain once, then you act. That is discipline. You have a choice. Now let's talk about tone. Tone communicates more than words. A calm tone says, "I am in control." An angry tone says, "I am overwhelmed." Children trust control. They do not trust overwhelm. That is why calm discipline works. You have a choice. Now let's address something uncomfortable. If you rely on anger, your discipline is weak. That is not an insult. It is a diagnosis. Anger compensates for a lack of structure. When systems are clear, anger is unnecessary. Stoicism builds systems. You have a choice. Now let's talk about repair. Even disciplined parents will make mistakes. If you lose your temper, you repair calmly. You do not dramatize it. You do not justify it. You acknowledge it. You reset. This teaches accountability without undermining authority. Children learn that mistakes are corrected, not defended. That is powerful. You have a choice. Now let's anchor this chapter with repetition. Discipline without anger is power. Discipline without anger is power. Discipline without anger is power. Anger feels strong. Calm is strong. Anger intimidates. Calm commands respect. Anger controls temporarily. Calm shapes permanently. You choose. Now let's look forward. You learn to control yourself. You learn not to outsource emotions. You learn not to rescue. You learn to model behavior. You learn to discipline without anger. You are building something consistent. Now is the time to teach your child how to manage their emotions. You mastered discipline. Now let's teach emotional control. Chapter 6. Teach emotional control, not emotional suppression. Most parents make a dangerous mistake. They confuse emotional control with emotional suppression, and the result is either emotional explosions later in life or children who do not trust their own inner world. Stoicism teaches something very different. Emotions are not the enemy. Obedience to emotions is. That is the key. You have a choice. You can teach your child to stuff emotions down until they burst. Or you can teach them how to feel without being ruled. Only one builds strength. Let's be clear from the start. Stoicism does not deny emotions. It denies their authority. Your child will feel anger. They will feel fear. They will feel frustration, disappointment, jealousy, and sadness. That is not a flaw. That is being human. The problem begins when emotions start making decisions. You have a choice. Many parents unintentionally teach suppression. Stop crying. Calm down right now. There's nothing to be upset about. Those phrases are meant to help, but they send a dangerous message. They tell the child, your inner experience is wrong. Your feelings are a problem. Hide them to be accepted. Hidden emotions do not disappear. They go underground. And underground emotions do damage later. That is not Stoic strength. That is delayed chaos. Stoicism teaches regulation, not repression. Say it clearly. Regulation, not repression. That is the repetition anchor of this chapter. You have a choice. Let's talk about what emotional control actually is. Emotional control is the ability to feel fully without acting impulsively. It is the space between feeling and action. It is the discipline of saying, I feel this and I choose my response. That is power. Suppression says, I should not feel this. Control says, I feel this and I am still in charge. That is the difference between fragile children and resilient ones. You have a choice. Now let's talk about how children learn emotional control. They do not learn it through lectures. They learn it through observation and repetition. When your child is emotional, they are practicing, not misbehaving. Practicing being human. Your job is not to stop the emotion. Your job is to coach the response. That is the Stoic role of a parent. You have a choice. Let's get practical. Your child is angry. They shout, they cry, they stomp. Your instinct may be to shut it down. Pause. Ask yourself one question. Am I trying to control the emotion or the behavior? You only need to control the behavior. Emotion can exist. Destructive behavior cannot. That distinction changes everything. You can say calmly, I see you're angry. You're allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to hit. That sentence teaches 3 critical lessons. Feelings are allowed. Boundaries are real. Control is expected. That is Stoic parenting. You have a choice. Now let's talk about naming emotions. Naming emotions creates distance. Distance creates control. When a child cannot name what they feel, the feeling controls them. When they can name it, they can manage it. This is not psychology jargon. This is a practical discipline. You teach your child to say, I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, I'm nervous. Not to dramatize, to clarify. Clarity reduces intensity. That is the key. But here is the important part. You do not name emotions for them forever. At first, you model it. Later, you ask questions. What are you feeling right now? What do you think set that off? You are teaching awareness. Awareness precedes control. You have a choice. Now let's talk about emotional validation. Validation is not agreement. This is where many parents get confused. You can validate the emotion without validating the behavior. I understand you're upset does not mean I agree with what you did. Stoicism demands clarity here. You acknowledge reality. You enforce standards, both at the same time. You have a choice. Now let's talk about emotional storms. Children do not calm down because you demand it. They calm down when the storm runs out of fuel. Your reaction either feeds the storm or starves it. If you escalate, the storm grows. If you stay grounded, it burns out. This is not magic. This is nervous system regulation. The calmest nervous system leads the interaction. That is the key. You have a choice. Now let's address a common fear. What if my child thinks emotions excuse behavior? They will not. Not if boundaries are consistent. Emotion is allowed. Destruction is not. That message must be unwavering. Stoic parents do not argue with emotions. They do not negotiate boundaries. If they calmly enforce limits while allowing feelings, that combination builds emotional intelligence. You have a choice. Now let's talk about modeling again. If you suppress your own emotions, your child learns suppression. If you explode, your child learns explosion. If you regulate, your child learns regulation. You cannot teach what you do not practice. If you never name your emotions, they will not either. If you never pause before reacting, they will not either. You are the template. That is the key. Let's talk about emotional language in the home. A Stoic household is emotionally literate, not emotionally chaotic. Feelings are acknowledged, but they do not dominate. You do not tiptoe around emotions. You do not fear them. You treat them like weather. They pass. This teaches children something critical. You are not your emotions. That lesson will save them years of suffering later. You have a choice. Now let's address suppression directly. Suppression looks calm on the outside, but it is brittle. Children who suppress emotions often look well-behaved until they are not. Then emotions come out sideways. Anxiety, aggression, withdrawal, perfectionism. Stoic parenting prevents this by allowing expression without chaos. You feel it. You name it. You do not obey it. Say it again. Feel it. Name it. Do not obey it. That is emotional discipline. You have a choice. Now here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. For the next week, do 3 things consistently. First, when your child is emotional, stay calm. Your regulation comes first. Second, name the emotion briefly. No lectures, no analysis. Third, reinforce the boundary without emotion. That is it. Simple, not easy. Expect resistance. Expect intensity at first. Why? Because old patterns fight before they break. Stay steady. You have a choice. Now let's talk about patience again. Emotional control is trained over time, not in one conversation, not in one moment. Every emotional episode is practice, not failure. Practice. If you treat emotions like emergencies, your child will too. If you treat them like training, your child will learn. That is the key. Let's anchor this chapter with repetition. Emotions are not the enemy. Obedience to emotions is. Control is not suppression. Control is leadership. You cannot teach emotional control if you model emotional avoidance. You have a choice. You learned how to discipline without anger. You learned how to allow emotions without chaos. Now it is time to apply this calm control in the most challenging moments of all. The moments when everything is loud, fast, and overwhelming. You taught emotional control. Now let's talk about pressure. Chapter 7. How to stay calm during tantrums and defiance. Tantrums are not emergencies. They feel like emergencies. They sound like emergencies, but they are not. They are storms, and storms do not need force. They need anchors. You have a choice. You can become part of the storm, or you can become the anchor that ends it. That is the key. Most parents lose control during tantrums because they misunderstand what is happening. They think the child is being disrespectful, manipulative, out of control. But a tantrum is not a strategy. It is a nervous system overload. Your child is not thinking. They are reacting. And if you react too, you now have two nervous systems out of control. That never ends well. You have a choice. Let's say this clearly. A tantrum is a test of leadership, not patience. Of leadership. The loudest person does not win. The calmest one does. The calmest nervous system sets the tone. That is Stoic law. You have a choice. Let's break down what actually fuels tantrums. Tantrums feed on three things: attention, emotion, urgency. When you rush, argue, plead, or threaten, you feed the fire. When you stay calm and present, the fire runs out of oxygen. That is not a theory, that is biology. Emotion escalates emotion. Calm de-escalates emotion. That is the key. Now let's talk about defiance. Defiance is often misunderstood. Most defiance is not about rules. It is about power. The child is asking one question: who is in control right now? If you escalate emotionally, you answer it for them. They are. If you remain calm and consistent, you answer it differently. You are. You have a choice. Now let's get practical. Your child is yelling, crying, refusing. Your instinct is to fix it fast. Pause. Ask yourself one question. Am I trying to end the noise or teach control? Ending the noise gives relief. Teaching control builds strength. Stoicism always chooses strength. You have a choice. Here is the Stoic Tantrum Protocol. Step 1. Lower your body language. Get down to their level, not to negotiate, to communicate calm. Slow movements, soft face, controlled posture. Your body speaks before your words do. That is the key. Step 2. Say very little. Tantrums are not listening states. Words bounce off emotion. One sentence is enough. I see you're upset. I'm here. Then silence. Silence is not neglect. Silence is regulation. It gives the nervous system space to settle. You have a choice. Step 3. Hold the boundary without emotion. If the rule is no, it stays no. If the consequence exists, it remains. You do not repeat. You do not justify. You do not escalate. You simply exist calmly next to the storm. This is hard because your own nervous system wants resolution. But resolution comes after regulation. Always. That is the key. Now let's talk about what not to do. Do not threaten. Threats escalate power struggles. Do not lecture. Lectures overwhelm. Do not negotiate. Negotiation during tantrums teaches manipulation. Do not shame. Shame creates emotional damage, not discipline. You have a choice. Now let's talk about presence. Presence is not passivity. Presence means you are fully there, emotionally steady. You are not scrolling. You are not ignoring. You are not dismissing. You are calm and immovable. Children feel this. They test less when they sense stability. That is the key. Now let's talk about time. Tantrums end faster when you stop trying to end them. That sounds backward. It is not. Urgency prolongs tantrums. Calm shortens them. Children calm down when their nervous system realizes there is no threat and no payoff. You have a choice. Now let's address defiance specifically. Defiance often looks like refusal. No, I won't. You can't make me. These words are bait. They invite a power struggle. Stoic parents do not take the bait. You acknowledge the boundary. You state the consequence. You follow through calmly. No argument. No persuasion. Defiance collapses when it meets certainty. That is the key. Let's give an example. Your child refuses to clean up. They yell. They resist. You say calmly, "Toys not cleaned up are put away." Then you wait. If they continue, you follow through. No anger, no lecture. The lesson is clear. Boundaries are not emotional. Children stop fighting what does not fight back. You have a choice. Now let's talk about your internal state. Tantrums trigger parents because they feel judged, embarrassed, out of control. That is ego. Stoicism requires ego discipline. You do not parent to look good. Your parent builds strength. Other people's opinions are irrelevant. Your child's development is the priority. You have a choice. Now let's talk about consistency. Inconsistent responses teach children to escalate. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That uncertainty encourages louder behavior. Consistency teaches predictability. Predictability teaches calm. Stoic parents are predictable. Same response. Every time. That is the key. Now let's address fear. Many parents fear that staying calm means tolerating bad behavior. It does not. Calm is not permissive. Calm is firm. You can be calm and unyielding at the same time. That is stoic strength. Emotion does not equal enforcement. Action does. You have a choice. Now let's talk about after the tantrum. Do not lecture. Do not revisit emotionally. When calm returns, you can reflect briefly. What happened? What could we do next time? Short. Simple. You are teaching awareness, not guilt. That is the key. Now let's talk about your training. Staying calm during tantrums is a skill. Skills require repetition. You will fail sometimes. That does not disqualify you. It shows where to train. Every tantrum is practice. For them, for you. You have a choice. Now here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. For the next 2 weeks, commit to one rule. You do not escalate emotionally during tantrums. You breathe, you slow down, you say less, you hold boundaries without anger. This will feel uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is training. Remember the anchor. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is training. You have a choice. Let's anchor this chapter with repetition. Tantrums are storms. You are the anchor. Defiance tests power. Calm answers it. The calmest person leads the room. Say it again. The calmest person leads the room. You learned how to stay steady in chaos. You learned how to hold boundaries without escalation. Now it is time to apply this discipline to the most emotionally complex stage of parenting. The stage where words cut deeper and stakes feel higher. You mastered tantrums. Now let's talk about teenagers. Chapter 8. Raising confident teens without losing authority. Teenagers do not need less structure. They need better leadership. This is where most parents panic. The voice changes, the attitude sharpens, the distance grows, and parents respond the wrong way. They either clamp down harder or they retreat completely. Both are mistakes. You have a choice. You can fight your teenager for control, or you can lead them with calm authority. Only one works. That is the key. Teenage behavior is not random. It is a search for identity. They are asking one question every day: who am I and where do I stand? If your response is emotional, you become an obstacle. If your response is steady, you become a reference point. Teenagers do not respect control. They respect self-control. That is Stoic law. You have a choice. Let's address the biggest fear parents have. I'm losing my child. You are not losing them. You are transitioning your role from controller to guide. But guidance still requires authority. Stoicism never removes authority. It refines it. That is the difference. You have a choice. Now let's talk about respect. Teenagers demand respect. But respect is not negotiated. It is modeled and enforced. If you demand respect emotionally, you lose it. If you consistently demonstrate self-respect, you gain it. Teenagers are hypersensitive to hypocrisy. If you demand calm but explode, they notice. If you demand honesty but lie, they notice. If you demand responsibility but avoid it, they notice. They notice everything. That is why modeling becomes even more important now. You have a choice. Let's talk about arguments. Teenagers love arguments, not because they enjoy conflict, because arguments feel like power. Arguments invite escalation. Escalation makes them feel equal. Stoic parents do not argue, they state expectations, they state consequences, they disengage emotionally. That removes the reward. You have a choice. Here is a rule you must adopt. Never debate values with an emotional teenager. Debates turn into power struggles. Power struggles destroy authority. You do not need to convince, you need to be consistent. That is the key. Now let's talk about communication. Teenagers do not respond to lectures. They respond to presence and brevity. Say less, mean more. One calm sentence beats 10 emotional ones. You state the boundary, you enforce it. Silence does the rest. Silence is uncomfortable. That is why it works. You have a choice. Now let's talk about freedom. Teenagers need freedom, but freedom without structure creates anxiety. Structure without flexibility creates rebellion. Stoic parenting balances both. Freedom is earned, not given. Responsibility expands freedom. Irresponsibility contracts it. This must be clear and predictable. No drama, no punishment speeches, just cause and effect. That is the key. Let's give a real example. Your teenager breaks a rule. Your instinct is to lecture. Pause. Lectures are emotional venting disguised as teaching. Instead, you calmly apply the consequence. No anger, no sarcasm, no shaming. Then you move on. This teaches accountability without humiliation. Humiliation breeds resentment. Accountability builds character. You have a choice. Now let's talk about emotional distance. Teenagers push away emotionally. This triggers parental fear. Fear leads to control. Control leads to rebellion. Stoicism teaches emotional steadiness. You do not chase approval. You do not withdraw love. You do not panic. You stay available without hovering. That communicates strength. Teenagers trust strength. That is the key. Now let's talk about trust. Trust is built through consistency, not leniency. Teenagers test boundaries to see if they are real. If boundaries collapse under pressure, trust disappears. Clear boundaries make teens feel safe, even when they complain about them. Complaints are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of testing. Testing means they still care. You have a choice. Now let's talk about emotional manipulation. Teenagers may use guilt, silence, anger, not because they are bad, because they are learning influence. Stoic parents do not react to manipulation. They acknowledge emotion without surrendering standards. I hear you're upset. The rule remains. That sentence is powerful. It says, I see you, and I am still in charge. That is Stoic authority. You have a choice. Now let's talk about identity. Teenagers experiment with identity, opinions, style, beliefs. You do not need to approve of everything. You need to stay grounded. Overreaction makes rebellion attractive. Calm curiosity makes it boring. You ask questions. You listen. You do not panic. Panic signals weakness. Stoicism never panics. You have a choice. Now let's address mistakes. Teenagers will make them, big ones sometimes. Your response will define the lesson. If you react emotionally, the lesson is fear. If you respond with calm accountability, the lesson is responsibility. You separate the behavior from the person. You made a mistake is different from you are a problem. Stoic parents never confuse the two. That is the key. Now let's talk about authority again. Authority during teenage years comes from three things: consistency, fairness, self-control. Not from dominance, not from intimidation. If you lose self-control, you lose authority. Immediately, you have a choice. Now let's give you a clear framework. The Stoic teen leadership model. First, stay emotionally neutral during conflict. Second, enforce clear consequences consistently. Third, offer guidance after emotions settle. Fourth, model the behavior you expect. Repeat. This model works because it removes drama and replaces it with structure. You have a choice. Now let's talk about your ego again. Teenagers challenge authority. That is developmentally normal. If you take it personally, you escalate. If you see it as training, you guide. Ego turns parenting into a competition. Stoicism turns it into leadership. You do not need to win against your teen. You need to prepare them for life. Life does not care about their emotions. It rewards discipline. You have a choice. Now let's talk about long-term outcomes. Teenagers raised with calm authority grow into adults who trust themselves. They know limits, they know consequences, and they know how to regulate. Teenagers raised with emotional control or emotional neglect struggle later, either with authority or with themselves. You are shaping that outcome now. That is the key. Now here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. For the next month, practice one discipline. You do not engage emotionally in teenage conflict. You state expectations. You enforce consequences. You disengage from drama. You lead with calm. This will feel unnatural. That means it is working. Old patterns fight before they collapse. Stay steady. You have a choice. Let's anchor this chapter with repetition. Teenagers do not need control. They need leadership. Authority is not force. It is consistency. You do not lose authority by staying calm. You lose it by reacting. You have a choice. You learned how to lead children. You learned how to lead teenagers. Now it is time to address the final threat to Stoic parenting, the one that undermines everything if left unchecked: your exhaustion. You mastered authority. Now let's talk about sustainability. Chapter 9. Parental burnout is a discipline problem. Your child does not cause burnout. It is caused by how you respond to pressure. That truth is uncomfortable and necessary. You have a choice. You can blame circumstances, or you can reclaim control. That is the key. Most parents believe burnout comes from doing too much. It does not. Burnout comes from carrying what is not yours to carry. Other people's emotions, other people's reactions, other people's expectations. Stoicism is ruthless here. You are exhausted because you are undisciplined with your energy. Not lazy, undisciplined. That changes everything. You have a choice. Let's be clear, parenting is demanding. That is reality. But exhaustion is not inevitable. Burnout is not a badge of honor. Martyrdom is not love. Stoicism rejects martyrdom. You do not destroy yourself to raise strong children. You model strength. And strength requires discipline. That is the key. Let's talk about emotional labor. Most parental burnout comes from emotional overinvestment. You absorb every mood. You carry every conflict. You ruminate over every mistake. That is not a responsibility. That is entanglement. Stoic parents separate what they control from what they do not. You control your effort. You control your boundaries. You control your response. You do not control outcomes. You do not control your child's emotions. You do not control other people's opinions. When you confuse these, burnout follows. You have a choice. Now let's talk about guilt. Guilt is one of the biggest energy leaks in parenting. Guilt for working too much. Guilt for not doing enough. Guilt for wanting space. Guilt-driven parenting has no limits, and anything without limits collapses. Stoicism does not stem from guilt. It parents from principle. Principles create boundaries. Boundaries protect energy. That is the key. Let's address overfunctioning. Many burned-out parents are doing too much for their children. They manage emotions. They solve problems. They prevent failure. This is not love. This is control disguised as care. Overfunctioning trains dependency. Dependency increases workload. Workload creates burnout. Stoicism cuts this cycle. You do less. On purpose, not neglect. Discipline. You have a choice. Let's talk about expectations. Burned-out parents expect perfection from themselves, from their children. Perfectionism is emotional chaos wearing discipline's clothing. Stoicism aims for consistency, not perfection. Consistency is sustainable. Perfection is exhausting. You do not need flawless parenting. You need stable parenting. That is the key. Now let's talk about rest. Rest is not indulgence. Rest is maintenance. If you neglect maintenance, systems fail. You schedule rest the same way you schedule discipline. Non-negotiable, planned, protected. Waiting until exhaustion forces rest is not wisdom. It is negligence. Stoic parents plan recovery. You have a choice. Now let's address resentment. Burnout often shows up as resentment. Resentment toward children, toward partners, toward life. Resentment means boundaries were violated repeatedly. Stoicism does not suppress resentment. It examines it. Where did you say yes when you should have said no? That is where discipline failed. Fix the boundary, not the emotion. That is the key. Let's talk about identity. Some parents lose themselves completely. Everything becomes about the child. Needs, schedules, emotions. This feels noble. It is not sustainable. Children do not need a disappearing parent. They need a grounded one. Stoicism insists on self-mastery first. You cannot lead if you are depleted. You have a choice. Now let's talk about control again. Burnout often comes from trying to control outcomes, grades, behavior, future success. Control creates tension. Tension drains energy. Stoicism shifts focus. You control effort. You control values. You control the structure. You release results. This is not detachment. This is efficiency. You have a choice. Now let's talk about routines. Burned out homes lack structure. Everything is reactive, last minute, emotional. Stoic homes rely on systems, sleep routines, meal routines, discipline routines. Systems reduce decision fatigue. Decision fatigue creates burnout. You do not need more motivation. You need fewer decisions. That is the key. Let's give you a clear framework. The Stoic Burnout Reset. First, remove unnecessary emotional labor. Stop managing feelings that are not yours. Second, reinstate clear boundaries with children, with others, with yourself. Third, create a non-negotiable recovery time, daily, weekly. Fourth, simplify expectations, consistency over perfection. This is discipline. You have a choice. Now let's talk about modeling again. A burned-out parent teaches martyrdom. A regulated parent teaches sustainability. Children learn how to treat themselves by watching how you treat yourself. If you run yourself into the ground, they learn to neglect yourself. Stoic parenting models balance. You work, you rest, you lead. That is the key. Now let's address fear. Some parents fear that stepping back means being selfish. It does not. It means being strategic. You cannot pour from an empty system. You cannot lead while depleted. Stoicism respects limits. You have a choice. Now here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. For the next 14 days, do 3 things. First, stop explaining yourself emotionally. No guilt-based justifications. Second, protect 1 block of time daily for recovery. No negotiation. Third, reduce overfunctioning. Let your child struggle appropriately. This will feel uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is training. You have a choice. Let's anchor this chapter with repetition. Burnout is not a child problem. It is a discipline problem. Energy is a resource. You must manage it. Boundaries are not selfish. They are leaders. You mastered control. You mastered boundaries. You reclaimed energy. Now it is time to bring everything together. You learned how to parent with discipline, calm, and clarity. Now let's talk about the legacy you are building. Chapter 10. Raising adults, not children. You are not raising a child. You are raising a future adult. That single shift in perspective changes everything. Most parenting mistakes happen because parents focus on comfort today instead of capability tomorrow. Stoicism never makes that mistake. You have a choice. You can optimize for peace in the moment, or you can train for strength over a lifetime. That is the key. Children grow up. Tantrums end, teenage rebellion fades, but habits remain, character remains, discipline remains. Your job is not to manage childhood. Your job is to prepare for adulthood. You have a choice. Let's be brutally clear. Life will not protect your child's feelings. The world will not negotiate boundaries. Stress will not lower its voice. If you do not prepare your child for that reality, reality will educate them instead. And reality is unforgiving. Stoic parents understand this early. They do not shield. They train. That is the difference. You have a choice. Let's talk about independence. Many parents claim they want independent children, but their actions say otherwise. They rescue too quickly. They explain too much. They control too tightly. Independence cannot grow in controlled environments. It grows where responsibility is real and consequences are predictable. You do not create independence by hovering. You create it by deliberately stepping back. That is the key. Now let's talk about responsibility. Responsibility is not assigned. It is practiced. Children learn responsibility when they experience the results of their actions, not lectures, not threats. Results. If you remove results, you remove learning. Stoicism never removes reality. You have a choice. Let's talk about accountability. Raising adults means holding standards even when it is uncomfortable, especially when it is uncomfortable. If you soften boundaries to avoid conflict, you are teaching avoidance. If you enforce boundaries calmly, you are teaching accountability. Accountability creates confidence. Avoidance creates fragility. That is the key. Now let's talk about entitlement. Entitlement is trained, not inherited. Children become entitled when effort and outcome are disconnected, when rewards arrive without responsibility, when comfort replaces contribution. Stoic parenting reconnects effort and outcome. You work, you contribute, you earn. That applies at every age. You have a choice. Let's talk about resilience again. Resilience is not toughness. It is adaptability. Resilient adults can handle rejection. They can tolerate discomfort. They can recover from failure. Those skills are trained early. Every time you allow your child to struggle, fail, recover, and try again, you are building resilience. Every time you rescue, explain away, or excuse, you weaken it. That is the key. Now let's talk about emotional adulthood. Adults are not people without emotions. They are people who manage them. They feel anger without destruction, disappointment without collapse, fear without paralysis. That is emotional adulthood, and it is modeled daily. If you regulate yourself, you teach regulation. If you react impulsively, you teach chaos. You cannot teach adulthood while emotionally living like a child. You have a choice. Let's talk about values. Values are not what you say. They are what you tolerate. If you tolerate disrespect, you teach disrespect. If you tolerate irresponsibility, you teach irresponsibility. Stoic parents are clear. They tolerate emotions. They do not tolerate destructive behavior. They tolerate mistakes. They do not tolerate excuses. That clarity builds character. That is the key. Now let's talk about discipline one last time. Discipline is not control. Discipline is preparation. You discipline a child so they do not need external discipline later. You teach structure so life does not have to break them to teach it. This is not harsh. This is merciful. Stoicism always thinks long-term. You have a choice. Now let's talk about love. Love is not protection from difficulty. Love is preparation for it. Love says, I believe you can handle this. Love does not say, I will remove every obstacle. That kind of love creates adults who trust themselves, and self-trust is the foundation of confidence. That is the key. Let's talk about authority one final time. Authority is not dominance. Authority is direction. When children trust your direction, they follow even when they disagree. That trust is built through years of consistency, not moments of control. If you lose control emotionally, you lose direction. Stoicism never loses direction. You have a choice. Now let's bring everything together. You learned to control yourself before trying to control your child. You stopped outsourcing your emotions. You stopped rescuing and started training resilience. You modeled the behavior you wanted to see. You disciplined without anger. You taught emotional control, not suppression. You stayed calm during tantrums and defiance. You led teenagers with authority, not fear. You reclaimed your energy and ended burnout. All of this led here, raising adults, not obedient children, not comfortable children, capable adults. That is the mission. You have a choice. Every interaction today is shaping who your child becomes tomorrow. Not through words, through patterns. Patterns of calm, patterns of discipline, patterns of responsibility. You do not need perfection. You need consistency. That is the key. Now let's end with a challenge. Starting today, ask yourself one question before you intervene. Is this preparing my child for adulthood or protecting me from discomfort? Answer honestly. Act accordingly. You do not need their permission to lead. You do not need approval to hold standards. You need discipline. Because disciplined parents raise resilient adults. And resilient adults can face any world. You have a choice. Make it. You have reached the end of this audiobook. And that matters. Because finishing is proof of discipline. Most parents look for answers. Very few commit to change. This audiobook was never about techniques. It was about identity. About who you become when pressure rises. About who leads when emotions demand control. About who your child watches when things fall apart. Let's be clear in this conclusion. Your child was never the problem. Your reaction was. Throughout this audiobook, you learned one core Stoic truth again and again. Leadership always starts inward. You learned to control yourself before trying to control your child. You learned that your child is not responsible for your emotions. You stopped rescuing and started training resilience. You learned to model the behavior you want to see. You discovered that discipline without anger is power. You learned to teach emotional control, not emotional suppression. You learned how to stay calm during tantrums and defiance. You learned how to lead teenagers without losing authority. You reclaimed your energy and understood that burnout is a discipline problem. And finally, you shifted your perspective. You are not raising children. You are raising adults. That is the foundation of Stoic parenting. This audiobook gave you a framework, not to control your child, but to master yourself, because when you master yourself, your child feels safe, guided, and grounded. You do not need perfection. You need consistency. You do not need to be louder. You need to be steadier. You do not need your child's permission to lead. You need discipline. That is the key. Now here is the most important reminder. Parenting will continue to test you. Stress will return. Emotions will rise. Chaos will knock again, and every time it does, you still have the same choice. React or respond. Give your power away or lead with calm. That choice never disappears. It defines everything. Now, before you go, I want to point you to the next level of mastery. If this audiobook helped you control your reactions, the next step is learning how to control your thoughts. Because reactions begin in the mind. I strongly recommend continuing with our next audiobook, Critical Thinking Mastery. Control your thoughts before they control you. This audiobook gives you complete command over your thinking patterns, reactions, and judgments. It teaches you how to spot distorted thinking, stop mental sabotage, and make decisions with clarity instead of emotion. If Stoic parenting taught you how to lead under pressure, Critical Thinking Mastery teaches you how to think under pressure. Together, they form a complete system. emotional discipline, mental discipline, and one more important note. The link to the Amazon ebook version of the Stoic Parent, Raising Resilient Kids in a Chaotic World, is available in the description. The ebook is the expanded version of this audiobook. It goes deeper into each concept. With more detailed explanations, examples, and practical frameworks you can revisit anytime. If you want to reinforce what you learned here, the ebook will help you do so. Now for your final challenge. Do not just admire these ideas. Apply them. Tonight, tomorrow, when the next difficult moment appears. Ask yourself one question. What does a disciplined parent do right now? Then act, because calm is not a personality. Calm is a practice. And disciplined parents do not raise perfect children. They raise resilient adults. This world needs more of them. You have a choice.